I used to dream about showing the world what I dream about. Forget a mic, my whole life I thought it'd be the mount. I guess it's fitting how life threw me the curveball. Pops told me work till you make it, man, then work more. I guess I took that to heart, cause I've been working harder now than I...
Welcome back to another episode of Mom's Basement here on iTunes and YouTube. Thank you guys so much for watching, listening, whatever it may be. We greatly appreciate it. As usual, I am your host, Joe. With me again, my co-host, Corey. We are ready to talk some sports today. We got a lot of NBA stuff on the slate today, along with some Chicago Cubs, White Sox updates. Trade deadline's getting very, very close, just a couple of weeks away. Before we dive into that stuff, make sure you guys check out the Crossover Report, crossoverreport.com, and at Crossover Report on all social medias. Check out that content every single day. Those guys are cooking up some good stuff over there. Always a shout out to them. All right, Corey.
Hello.
Are we ready? Dive in. NBA free agency has taken off since the last time that we saw you guys a couple weeks ago. Not only the free agent signings, but there have been a couple big trades as well. Some superstar players have moved. They've changed sceneries. They've changed conferences. First thing I want to get into here, Paul George, the move nobody saw coming, gets traded to Oklahoma City for Victor Oladipo and Donatas Sabonis. So I was shocked when I got this notification. I was absolutely shocked.
Yeah, you think Paul George would probably end up somewhere at the start of the offseason. If you thought Paul George was going to get traded, you would think somewhere like Boston, where they felt that another superstar player would take them to the next level. But Paul George got moved for basically nothing. I think
Scraps.
I think Indiana's going to be pretty bad, as well as the Bulls this year, just trying to get into the lottery and kind of reset themselves. But Paul George with Russell Westbrook is going to be real interesting to see.
Here's the curious thing to me, is when I saw this, I originally thought, okay, that's the best they could do. That's the best offer they could get for Paul George, and they feel like they have to move him before he leaves for nothing, a la Gordon Hayward, which we'll get into here in a second. But then Ryan Russillo, a guy who I follow on Twitter, I love his radio show, the Ryan Russillo Show, ESPN Radio, 12 to 3 on ESPN2 every weekday. A guy who's really plugged in the NBA scene. He's had a pass with Boston. He's been all over the NBA for his whole career. He got a text from another NBA GM saying, my offer for George was better. That right there is, whoa, hang on, time out. What's Indiana doing? Obviously, he's not going to give you who the GM is, what the team is, all that nonsense, but they had a better offer on the table. I trust that tweet. Ryan Russillo is not tweeting that if he doesn't get that text.
Yeah, and, I kind of heard that. I hadn't heard who it was or which NBA GM it was. I don't think anybody will ever find out which NBA GM that was, but maybe if the offer was better for George, it was to the point where maybe Indiana kind of just, for lack of a better phrasing, just kind of said fuck it and realized they have to hit the reset button, and they don't really care about putting a team together on the court that's going to be overly impressive that fans will come see. They're trying to put a team together that is going to get them the #1 overall pick.
You would think they would have gotten an extra first-round pick for Paul George.
You would think, yeah.
That's the most surprising part, is you didn't get any picks. You got two players.
This is one of the weirder trades that I've seen.
And you would think that they would save money, but Oladipo actually makes more money than Paul George. And then plus you add Sabonis' salary, so you're not saving money. You're not getting a pick for the future. You're getting two players.
It just seems odd that they did that, because they didn't have to make that trade. I mean, they would have had to trade him at some point, or you risk losing him for nothing.
Yes.
But that just seems like a strange situation to me.
Now the backcourt in OKC is elite. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, backcourt, Paul George is a 2/3, whatever we want to do there. But with Russell Westbrook, the reigning MVP, the triple-double master, Paul George, Steven Adams is a legit center. Robertson re-signed their $30 million contract. He's still not tipping well. I don't know if you saw that story.
I did see that, actually.
That was hilarious. Steven Adams, we're out here tipping better than $13. That was classic. But, I mean, that's a pretty good team. They will be, I'll say they'll be a top 6 seed in the West next year, in a very crowded West, because obviously we'll touch more on this as we go through the NBA here, but 14 of the top 15 players essentially in the NBA are in the Western Conference.
Yeah, so that just basically means that LeBron's going to have a nice, easy run to a the NBA Finals.
And I'm going to go actually deeper into that as we move forward here. But Paul George, Russell Westbrook, I think it's going to work out flawlessly. These guys are going to score a lot of points. Paul George, a very good defender. Russell Westbrook is an effort defender. I like effort defenders a lot. I mean, he's going to give you everything he has every single night.
I mean, ultimately, what you got to look at with these moves, and it's why I'm kind of soured on the NBA, even in the offseason, is just which of these moves is going to put one team over Golden State or one team over Cleveland, and I don't think there's any move that's happening.
But you say that, and then of course the unexpected can happen, an injury, anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously these teams are trying to put themselves in the best position possible because there's nothing you can do.
And you see, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in a couple of minutes. But Houston's trying to do that as well.
Yeah, that's coming up next. We're going to segue right here into Houston. Houston trades.
Look at that transition, though. Look at me. I didn't even know the schedule. Let's go.
It was like 7 players. It was Montrezl Harrell, future first-round pick, $680K cash considerations, plus a couple guys they traded for. It was like 7 players, a pick, and money to the Clippers for Chris Paul.
Mm-hmm.
1, Chris Paul was going to be a free agent. I don't understand why Rockets had to do a sign and trade if he was going to sign there anyway. That doesn't make any sense. 2, they obviously get better because he's a better point guard than Patrick Beverley was. They had Jeremy Lin in the past. He's the point guard. Like, he is average 18 and 9 last year. That is what you want out of a point guard. Obviously, James Harden, second in the MVP voting. He's going to score. You paid him $228 million on this extension.
That came out today.
That's an insane amount of money to pay somebody to play basketball. But $228 million nonetheless for him to go out there, shoot threes, score a lot of points, play no defense. Chris Paul's going to play defense, but, I mean, 18 and 9 average for him last season. It's a good move for Houston. But if you were going to get him anyway, that's the only thing is, why'd you have to trade so much for him?
You know, do you know the exact figures on the contract? Because I actually do not. Because the only thing that I think that gives you is another.
You talking about Chris Paul's
Paul's contract for the sign and trade. Because if anything, if it's like a 5-year deal,
he's opting in. It's not a 5. He's opting in to his option for this season. Opting in, that way they can do a sign and trade. They get his bird rights with that. So it's about $24 million that he's opting into to play with James Harden this year, and he'll still be an unrestricted free agent next year. But the only thing that they really gain from the trade is they acquire his bird rights.
So they can extend him.
They can extend him for the max without it hurting their salary cap. Yeah, they can do that.
So, I mean, that's the only logic I could see behind it. It ended up being like a 7-for-1 deal, which is crazy. And then today there's been whispers that they're interested in Carmelo Anthony as well. So
this is something I would love to see.
Yeah, this would be this could be something that goes really well, or just horrifically poorly for the Houston Rockets. Because if your main goal is to acquire as much talent, superstar talent, that's what the Rockets are trying to do. Because James Harden, Chris Paul, and Carmelo Anthony would make a really nice big 3, but there's not a lick of defense to be played there, and their styles really contrast since they all need to be having the ball to make an impact. So they're acquiring talent, but let's see how well that works.
So their starting center at this point is Nene. He just re-signed on a very cheap contract. They do have Eric Gordon, formidable off the bench. Ryan Anderson, they're trying to get rid of that money. Trevor Ariza, they got rid of Montrezl Harrell, Sam Decker, Lou Williams, who was very good for them off the bench last season, scoring, and he's one of the best off the bench in scoring. So they got rid of a lot. But if you put Carmelo on this team, they're going to make waves. I mean, they were 3 seed in the West this year. That makes them better. They're probably the second best team in the Western Conference with Carmelo Anthony. And I think if Carmelo's there, it's total change of scenery for him. And then he's going to play a different style of basketball than he would in New York. In New York, it's Carmelo. That's it. He's getting the ball, and he's trying to score. He's trying to do a lot. I know Porzingis is there, but, I mean, Carmelo, he wants to do it himself right now, and he has been like that. So now in Houston, he's a 3. I see what you're doing.
Sorry. For everybody,
Quintana? I didn't even realize you were watching Quintana.
Yeah, sorry guys. I paid attention though. So Carmelo is out of New York, and he really was number 1 there. Porzingis is.
He'll be a 3, and then he's at the point of his career where he needs to realize, okay, I just need to be the guy that scores.
Another thing I was thinking too is that he was forced sort of into Phil Jackson's triangle there.
The worst offense in the league.
That offense really doesn't work anymore, and if you take him down to Houston, you could still put the ball in his hands with 20 seconds left in the game if you're down by 1. But you also have Chris Paul, who's going to command attention. You're going to have James Harden, who is by MVP standards, the second best player in the NBA. So, real interesting dynamic they would have down there.
The Western Conference is going to be unreal. The 8th seed could be a 2 seed in the East, 3 seed in the East.
Yeah,
that's really scary to think about. Next move we want to talk about here. Gordon Hayward made his decision on the 4th of July. It came down to Utah, Miami, and Boston. My gut was telling me Miami. I don't know what it was. Hassan Whiteside, did you see that video on Snapchat? All his Snapchat, someone put into a video and they put it on Twitter. It was like, he's like, oh, every day, man, we be out here on the beach. We're chilling, we're kicking. It was hilarious. But it doesn't work. Hayward signs with Boston, reunites with his college head coach, Brad Stevens. Isaiah Thomas is obviously there. Al Horford, that's their big 3. They obviously have Jaylen Brown from last year, number 3 pick. Jason Tatum, number 3 pick of this season. Did Boston get worse by signing Gordon Hayward? I think they got worse. I'm a big depth guy, and I know this is kind of something that people are going away from in the NBA. Obviously, you see super team after super team with Cleveland with Love, Kyrie, LeBron, and not much else. Golden State with...
Well, that was your big argument, too, for putting, besides having LeBron, putting Cleveland above Golden State was the fact that they have more depth.
They have depth, yeah.
But that obviously...
It didn't work. I love depth because, 1, you never know what's going to happen. 2, spark off the bench is key in the NBA, I think. So now signing Hayward, they had to get rid of Kelly Olynyk. They rescinded his restricted offer. He signs in Miami to play with Hassan Whiteside and all the young guys they got there up and coming. They're going to be a playoff team in the East. They're not going to do much. They have to trade Avery Bradley to Detroit to get back one of the Morris brothers, who's actually in a criminal investigation. He might not even be able to play some of this year. So you trade your best defender for nothing. Now Gordon Hayward is coming in. That's 1. You had to give up 2 key guys. You're going to lose more. Now you're going to have to rely on Jaylen Brown, who didn't look too good in his rookie year. Jason Tatum, you don't know what he is yet. Marcus Smart, and we've seen what Marcus Smart can do, but we also have seen the basket case that he can be. So there's just a lot of unknown there. Al Horford's getting a year older. Isaiah Thomas is obviously the superstar there, but he came out today and said, if you want to keep me, you have to offer me max money. So there's that you got to deal with now. He's going to want to get paid. I think Boston got worse. They'll still be a 2 seed. They're not going to be past Cleveland in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Jose Quintana just got taken yard.
By Nolan Arenado. That just hurts me. But Nolan Arenado's a goddamn good player. But sorry, guys. Anywho, so Gordon Hayward to Boston. I don't think it makes him worse because I'm sort of on the opposite side of how Joey thinks, where I think that star power wins in the NBA. I've said that since we started doing this podcast. I still don't think. I think this still makes them good enough to get bounced by LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals, which is, exactly what happened. The Boston team from last year. Let's not forget that. It might not mean overly much, but they were down 2-0 to the Chicago Bulls in the 1 versus 8 seed matchup in the first round of the playoffs, and. Who you can play the who knows what happens game if Rajon Rondo doesn't get hurt for the Bulls, because he seemed to be really the X factor in that series. But as weird as that sounds to say, but Gordon Hayward isn't Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook. He's more in the class of Jimmy Butler or below. And to be quite honest with you, you are sacrificing depth to get him. I just don't think it makes you any better. If you're looking at team outcome, I don't think it makes you any better.
They would have needed Hayward and Paul George. Then they're the best team in the East, regardless of what they have to sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, it was something I thought that was going to happen anyway, Hayward to Boston, because they wanted to get, a second quote-unquote star there. But at the same time, I don't think it gets them any further. He's
a very good 2. I mean, Isaiah's still the 1 there. He's going to score 30 a game. But Hayward's a very good option for number 2, one of the best 2 options in the league. But he's just not enough. You need more, and you needed Paul George. You could have ran out Avery Bradley, Paul George, Gordon Hayward, Al Horford as 4 of your 5 starters, and you would have been the best lineup in the East. Period. Better than the Cavs, because Kevin Love's not a star. Tristan Thompson's kind of bad now ever since he got paid. It's LeBron and Kyrie. That's it. Mm-hmm. You're doing the best in the East.
Basically, you saw this in the playoffs too, especially in the NBA Finals, where if you don't have Kyrie and LeBron combining for like 75, 80 points in a playoff game, you're not winning a game. So, maybe that's where the depth sort of comes in over the star power, but just the depth of the starting lineup. But at the same time, I think this is still Cleveland's conference to win. I think they're going to win it easily because every star is leaving the Eastern Conference.
Speaking of every star leaving the Eastern Conference and LeBron James, 14 of the top 15 players are in the West now, as we mentioned. Now, this for me just speaks loud and clear to LeBron is not leaving Cleveland. He's not going to LA. He's not going to Golden State to team up with Durant and those people. He's not going anywhere near the West because he could crawl into the NBA Finals in the Eastern Conference every single year. Why is he leaving that?
He could play, honest to God, he could play 1 in every 3 games during a regular season. He could play 30 regular season games. And if they make it in as an 8 seed, they're winning
going to the
Eastern
NBA
Conference.
Finals. Yeah.
I mean, it's like the LeBron factor itself, and the fact that people now. This is an interesting dynamic where you hear people say that the Eastern Conference is just absolute garbage. You have to wonder, is the East actually garbage, or is it just that LeBron is that good? Up until this offseason, I would say, no, LeBron is just that good. But now the East is kind of garbage. I mean, you're going to have a lot of teams that are pretty actively tanking in the East. You got the Bulls and the Pacers amongst other teams. And LeBron is by and far the best player in the conference.
In the league, in the world.
Well, yeah, okay. But I'm
talking
of
all time.
No, I'm talking about just the Eastern Conference. But the Cavs themselves are the premier destination for some of these free agents. I mean, Jamal Crawford today, he signed with the Timberwolves, but Jamal Crawford had an interest in signing with the Cavs. It's just making money work, and unfortunately, in some cases you can't. But Cleveland is a destination, the East, and everything goes through Cleveland.
Cleveland could still add, say the Bulls buy out Wade, and he decides I want to go ring chase. Where do you think he's going to go?
He's going to go.
He's going to Cleveland.
He's going to where he's going to win a title, and that's in Cleveland. So it's right now. It's basically there's no news in the East. The Cavs are going to win the East again. I don't care what happens in free agency. I don't care where Gordon Hayward signed. It didn't really make a difference. They're not going. The Celtics aren't getting any further. And then until somebody actually beats the Golden State Warriors in the West, nothing's changed for me.
There actually are a couple up-and-coming teams in the Eastern Conference. The Sixers are going to make the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. The Sixers will be a real interesting watch.
I mean, the Feds, Fultz, Embiid, Darko, and Simmons, plus J.J. Redick, who's going to be there. He's going to help that team a lot. They're going to be good. They still have Okafor coming off the bench. That's going to be a very good team.
Yeah, I hope they gel together really quickly, too, because...
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch.
Not just gel together quickly, but stay healthy, because some of these guys have been hurt for a certain amount of time over the past few years, that the Sixers are going to get to the point where they have to re-sign these guys, but you don't know what you have in these guys because they've just been consistently hurt. But I think they can get into the playoffs, and I think... they could be a dark horse to make the Eastern Conference Finals. They're not beating LeBron.
The Bucks are getting better every year.
Yep.
Giannis is an MVP candidate in my mind. I think Derrick Rose is a dark horse to sign there to play point guard with that team. I think Matthew Dellavedova, who is their current point guard, and they sign him for stupid money for what he brings to the team. If they can get rid of that contract, bring Rose in on a lower money deal to go with Giannis, and if Parker can come back from another knee injury, and Thon Maker, the 7-1 kid they drafted last season, kind of all come together. They're going to be in the playoffs. The Heat are going to get into the playoffs. It's going to be interesting in the East. But obviously the West is the powerhouse conference right now. That's just how it's going to be. One more thing on the NBA, a thing I just want to nitpick with the Bulls, as I always do, other than the Butler trade because that was phenomenal. But they signed Cristiano Felicio to a 4-year, $32 million contract. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. He averaged 4 points a game in 66 games. I mean, what does he really bring to the table? $8 million a year for this guy who's going to back up Robert Lopez, and they have Lavernier and other centers. So I just don't really get the move. It's a lot of money to give to a guy who isn't a good basketball player. I mean, at least it's not the Knicks giving Hardaway, $71 million, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
One thing you have to look at, I mean, I thought it was a lot of money too, but I look at a lot of these NBA deals and I just think, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, the money in the NBA is unreal.
Money doesn't matter.
But why do you need to extend it now?
It's like giving out candy, but at the same time, I think it's just one of those where he kind of needs to. They're either paying for potential, or they're just trying to get him to step up into a bigger role where he's worth that money, and they believe he can do that. And I don't necessarily buy that. But
I hate it. He's signed through his age 28 season. You know, $7.8 million this year, $8.4 next year, $8.2 the year after, and then $7.5, and then he's a free agent at 29. Why? He has not shown you a single thing that warrants this contract, and it just bugs me because you don't even need him. You can let him walk. You're going to rebuild, so he's not going to be there when the rebuild's over. You don't need to throw money.
I mean, the only thing is, the only thing I can see is you need bodies to fill up the roster.
You could find somebody to be a backup center for less than $8 million.
Yeah, maybe they're not. I mean, maybe they're not planning on him being the backup center for the conceivable next 2, 3, 4 years.
The Bulls hurt my head 90% of the time.
It's all about them being the worst team in the NBA and trying to get to the top pick in the lottery and draft a couple superstars. But
moving from the hardwood to the diamond, Cubs and White Sox talk here on Mom's Basement, iTunes, and YouTube. The Cubs have been the squad mired in mediocrity, if I will say so myself. It's July 8th. We're almost at the All-Star break. They're 43-43. They can't pitch. They can't hit. They can't win more than one game in a row.
So what you're saying is everything's great.
I'm sad, but I'm not panicked. I'm just sad because the division's so bad. They're 4 back in Milwaukee, who somehow, some way, are 8 games above 500. It doesn't make any sense to me. They don't have good pitching. Their lineup is okay. Braun's been hurt all year. Thames was a great sign. Travis Shaw was a steal to play third base. Boston's looking at the biggest gaping hole they've had at third base in a long time, as Shaw's crushing it in Milwaukee. It doesn't make a lot of sense. We're getting close to the deadline. There has to be moves made. Theo Epstein said, we're either going to make 3 big trades or we won't make any trades. I just don't really know where it's going to go. And then someone asked him about being sellers at the deadline. He said, I don't foresee us being a seller, but I also didn't foresee us being 500 right now in the season. So what are they going to do?
So basically his advice to them is play better.
Play better.
Because that works for everything.
They don't have a single All-Star on the team that won the World Series last year. Wade Davis is the only guy who made the NL team, which I am happy about, to be honest, because 1, the All-Star game doesn't mean anything this year. 2, they could use a few days off to get their heads right, whatever they need to do, because it's going to be a long second half for them. They're going to need to play outstanding baseball, like they did in the first half last year.
Yeah, and they have some things going for them. First of all, I heard it on Carmen and Yurko on ESPN 1000 while I was driving to work. Over the last 2 years, with Joe Madden,
they kill it in August.
Yeah, with Joe Madden at the helm in August and September. So you have August, September 1 year, August, September another. So 4 months. I think they've averaged around 20 wins per month in those months. So that's room for them to, I mean, that's a history saying that they can do that. Also, they're playing, I think, I don't know what the exact number is, but the majority of the games they're playing are against teams that are currently below 500. So they have the opportunity to capitalize on some really bad teams and try to, inflate their win totals. They certainly aren't a flawless team. I think that no matter who wins the Central, it's going to be the weakest division of the division winner of the 3 divisions in the NL. But there's really no reason why the Cubs can't overtake Milwaukee, no matter what Milwaukee does at the deadline. But I think the Cubs do need some controllable pitching help. They'll probably look at Sonny Gray. I wish they would look at Jose Quintana, but they'll look at some sort of controlled pitcher and try to boost their staff.
Now they open up the second half at Baltimore, at Atlanta. Those should be games they can win. They go to St. Louis after that. They should win that series. Then they go for 4 against the White Sox. They should win at least 3 of those. And then they go to Milwaukee in late July, right before the deadline. They're in Milwaukee, so that right there is going to be the series that kind of determines. Okay, we need to.
But see, now you're saying that they should win all these series.
They should
based on the talent they have. Yes, they should win this series. But I think Atlanta's like 1 game behind them in the wild card chase, and St. Louis is 1 game behind them in the division. I mean, these are teams that, record-wise, are the same as the Chicago Cubs for the most part. It's just you got to get Kyle Schwarber to stop hitting 170.
He's got 2 hits today, including a home run.
Yeah, he's still hitting 175 though. And the pitching's got to perform. Jake Arrieta got bounced out of today's game. Just it seems like they've collectively taken a step back, and that's a problem for a team that wants to repeat as a world champ.
There's only one team in the National League that scares me. It's the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's the only team that scares me at all. Right. And I leave the Nationals out of that because they've never won a playoff series. They always collapse in September and October. They're not scaring me until they prove they can beat somebody in the playoffs. I mean, am I wrong to say that? I don't think I'm wrong to say that at all.
No, the Nationals have never won a playoff series.
They've never won a playoff series, so why are they scaring me?
Until they fix their bullpen, they will continue to not win.
And Dusty Baker runs his starting pitchers into the ground during the season. Scherzer, I'm looking at you. Strasburg, I'm looking at you.
See, at this point, he has no option but to, because they don't have a bullpen. Their bullpen has blown the...
Are you kidding? They signed K-Rod.
Yeah, about that.
7 ERA.
Nah.
Yeah, they're not scaring me, so I'm still picking the Cubs to win this division, meet the Dodgers in the CS, and rematch from last year. That's my thing. But this is what I want done. I want 3 trades, and they're big trades, and I want them to keep Eloy Jimenez. I don't know how realistic that will be because of the moves they need to make. They need to get Christian Yelich from Miami. Miami's going to be a fire sale. They're going to have a new owner who's not going to want all these contracts because they just don't have the money. Stanton could even be traded. I don't know if you've seen anything like that, but any of those talks.
I've seen the Yelich talks.
Yelich for sure.
Stanton's got a $325 million contract.
It's only a $25 million hit on the luxury tax. If, say, Bryce Harper, when he hits free agency, what do you think is going to be bigger, Stanton or Harper? Harper. So it doesn't look that bad if you trade for him. So they could get rid of him somehow to somebody. I don't know who. That's less realistic. But Christian Yelich, trade for him. He's your everyday center fielder, your everyday leadoff hitter.
Okay, but let's keep in mind here before you even start doing these. The Cubs have 5 really decent prospects to really good prospects, and then it just falls off the map. So you're trying to not give up Eloy, but that's not going to work. You're going to have to either give up somebody from your major league roster,
which I'm fine with doing.
Yeah, but it depends on, the other team's going to have to want him.
Correct. And you're telling me Miami wouldn't want a guy who costs less, plays is good defense in center field, like Albert Almora? I'm not saying he's a centerpiece, but I'm saying he's involved in the deal.
So so for Christian Yelich, who would you have as a centerpiece then?
Javier Baez.
I don't think.
Ian Happ plays second base. Javier Baez, Albert Almora for Christian Yelich.
Why would any team want Javier Baez?
Are you serious?
Have you seen his swing and miss rate?
He's fine. The potential is there. He plays the best second base in baseball. There's a lot you can do there with Javier Baez. I believe I have you on tape saying you would want Javier Baez.
I think you would.
I could go through the records.
Please
and find
do.
It. I'll find
Please do, because I have been the biggest Javi Baez detractor since he's been promoted.
I want Christian Yelich, and if I can't get Christian Yelich, then I want them to trade for 2 starting pitchers.
You should go for the pitching route a little more, but
they need to do something.
The offense isn't a problem.
I've said that all year, and they still can't hit. They still cannot hit.
Yeah, but that team, that lineup is still filled with guys.
They're relying on John Jay.
John Jay's been a good free agent signing.
Great signing, but he's a 4th outfielder, and he's at the point where he needs to play every day now for them to be, because he's hitting 305. He needs to be in the lineup every day, hitting leadoff, playing good defense. I mean, he's been a great sign, phenomenal sign, but he should not be a guy they rely on. Period.
Look, all I'm saying is if you're trying to get a young, controllable starter, you're going to have to give up Happ or Jimenez because there's a lot of question marks surrounding the other guys you would want to trade. Whereas a prospect, you can kind of mold them your own way, whereas a guy like Javier Baez, he's got swing and miss concerns. You've got Addison Russell, who has off the field concerns.
Allegedly.
They're concerns whether it happened or not. It's off the field. I mean, if you're looking for a guy like Sonny Gray, they're going to ask for Ian Happ or they're going to ask for Eloy Jimenez.
I don't think you need to give one of those guys against Sonny Gray. I don't. Chris Archer for sure.
Well, Chris Archer isn't moving at all.
I agree.
But if you want to get an impact talent, you have to give up an impact talent.
There's also other options. Marcus Stroman's number 1 on my wish list.
You would definitely have to give up Eloy for that.
I would do it.
I know you would because
I would do it.
Because you're
one. I would buy 3 Marcus Stroman Cubs jerseys. Corey, that kid can spin the baseball. He's got charisma. He fires up the crowd.
I don't care about his charisma or his ability to fire up the crowd. I care about his ability to pitch, and he's a good pitcher.
He's a damn good pitcher.
And you know what? He's controlled through 2020 on a cheap deal,
Yep.
so you're going to have to give up Eloy Jimenez for that to happen. And then, who else would you have interest in besides Stroman?
Julio Teheran is a guy that I've liked for years now for the Cubs, and they almost pulled the trigger a few years ago when they were trading Ryan Dempster. Way back, they almost pulled the trigger and got him. Then didn't work out. He stayed in Atlanta.
You might be able to get him for. You wouldn't have to give up Eloy to get him. I think.
I agree. I wouldn't give up Eloy.
Just looking at it, because I've done a lot of comparisons just based on Jose Quintana. Julio Teheran has a WAR that's far worse than Jose Quintana's WAR, and Julio Teheran's best season is not better than Jose Quintana's worst season at this point. So you can afford to give up a lot less for him. I think if you offer a guy like Candelario and De La Cruz, maybe that's something that entices the Braves, because the Braves already have a phenomenally deep farm system, but they need to do something with the rotation because everybody is taking a step back.
Lastly, Verlander is interesting. I don't care about the money. The Cubs have deep pockets, can pay him.
It's good. It's actually really good that they would have to pay him that much money, because you wouldn't have to spend one of your top 5 prospects to get him, in my opinion.
And Detroit saying they want a big return, I think is ridiculous.
Detroit better be prepared to pay big money to get that, because
I don't understand where the return comes in for Verlander. That's huge. You get lower level prospects for him. He's older. He's got wear and tear on the arm, but he's a good fit for the Cubs, I think.
And his contract, I think, goes for a few more years at that.
Yeah, it does. He's got control, and then they could throw in Alex Avila for the Cubs to be their backup catcher. I think that's a deal that makes a ton of sense for the Cubs to do. And if they can get two pitchers out of this at the deadline, they'll be in much better shape going into August. My pipe dream, Christian Yelich is a Chicago Cub. Corey's watching Jose Quintana.
Sorry, no. Jose Quintana gave up a leadoff double, then struck out the side. So.
Speaking of Jose Quintana and those White Sox, Corey, go ahead and talk about your Southside squad.
Well, you know what? We're doing exactly what I wanted to do when the season started. Right now, the White Sox are in last place in the American League Central, so that's great. Coming into today, they were half a game back of the San Diego Padres and the Cincinnati Reds for the third worst record in the MLB, which would put them in a top 3 pick for next year's MLB draft. Also, thank God that the Cincinnati Reds signed Hunter Green yesterday for a record amount of money, $7.23 million, before the deadline expired, because that would mean that if he didn't sign, the Reds would get that pick back, which could push the White Sox out of the top 5. Jose Quintana's had a phenomenal June. He's had a really good July. His last start in July, he only made it through 4 1/3 innings, but he had to throw 30 extra pitches because the White Sox defense made 4 errors in 4 innings, which is just laughably bad. I wish they would perform well when he pitched, but that's beside the point. I think on July 31st, Quintana's going to get dealt. David Robertson's going to get dealt. Maybe even Todd Frazier, because Todd Frazier's been hitting better. And then into August, you'll see Melky getting dealt. You'll see Todd Frazier get dealt. You might see Tommy Kahnle get dealt by the deadline. And this White Sox team is going to be really bad come July 31st. Like they're bad right now, but they're going to have Carlos Rodon as the only player worth watching. Well, Tim Anderson, but you'll have Carlos Rodon giving you a chance to win in his starts. But beyond that, their rotation is going to be absolute garbage till they start calling people up. And you know what? I'm just hoping by the end of the season they're securely a top 5, maybe a top 3 pick in the next draft, because the next draft is going to be loaded. So.
Which is exactly where you want to be.
Yeah, this is, as a White Sox fan, it's exciting. Some of the prospects have been doing well, some have not been doing well. Tomorrow you got the Futures game, so you're going to have Yohan Moncada, Zach Collins, and Michael Kopech pitching in those games, or in that game, so that'll be an interesting watch. But right now for the White Sox, it's just trying to find a partner for Jose Quintana, because it just seems like it's all over the map right now. I really wish the Cubs would get in on Jose Quintana. The people say that the Cubs and White Sox wouldn't trade with each other. I think that's absolute bullshit.
They should trade with each other. If it helps both franchises, there's no reason you shouldn't. And forget all the garbage nonsense people want to bring into that conversation. I wish they would have done it already.
Yeah,
I've said this for months.
I mean, I look at a guy like, and I've mentioned this to you. I look at a guy like Eloy Jimenez, who, if you guys don't know, is the Cubs' top prospect.
He's a beast,
and he's number 7 overall in the MLB pipeline. top 100 rankings.
He's a freaking beast.
He's an animal. In batting practice, he hits home runs from the opposite side. I mean, the guy is an absolute animal. And I think he would be great for the White Sox in terms of a rebuilding team. And I think if you were to give up something like Quintana and a bullpen piece to the Cubs, or if honest to God, whatever the Cubs want from our major league roster for Eli, I would give up, because that's a deal that benefits both teams. And I hate that it's not being talked about. The teams mentioned for Jose Quintana right now, you got the Yankees, you got the Astros, you got the Rockies, the Dodgers, the Braves.
The Brewers.
Yeah, the Brewers just came up yesterday, but I think the Brewers are just going to be used to sort of push the other teams. I was actually told by a guy who's pretty plugged in with the Atlanta Braves that the Braves already have an offer out for Jose Quintana. It's for 4 pitchers, not a single bat. The White Sox are looking for bats in their farm system. So, the deadline's fast approaching. It's going to be a real exciting time on both sides of the town, because the Cubs need to add and the White Sox need to subtract.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting few months, and maybe this might be stretching, this might be way out there in left field, but it's running through my mind. Maybe because people aren't talking about Cubs-White Sox blockbuster deal, that's the reason it just might happen. We can only hope.
That would make me really happy.
We can only hope. With Theo Epstein, I have full faith in him. I know Corey has faith in Rick Hahn to do what's right for both teams in Chicago as the trade deadline winds near.
Well, Theo doesn't want a rental either.
Right.
It just makes too much sense for it not to be talked about. It just sucks that it's not being talked about.
He had a blueprint these 5 years. Add through the draft. Add my lineup through the draft. Obviously Schwarber, Almora. What's his name? Chris Bryant. Can't even remember Chris Bryant. What's his name? Wilson, guys like Wilson Contreras. All these guys. He had a blueprint. I'm not gonna risk it all on young arms, young high school arms, because anything could happen to those arms. Tommy John is looming always. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna add through free agency John Lester. I'm gonna trade for Jake Arrieta. I'm gonna trade for Kyle Hendricks. I'm gonna sign veteran innings eater like John Lackey, and it worked. They won a World Series. But now it's time to change that blueprint.
And see, the thing is, it's different from last year, because the Cubs were, you can look at it and say they were obviously the best team in baseball last year through the regular season, but at the deadline they're like, okay, we're one solid closer away. Everything else is fine. We need someone to slam the door shut in the 9th, and they traded Gleyber Torres and a couple other pieces for Aroldis Chapman. That's not what you need this time. You don't need a rental. The Cubs have a little bit of an issue when it comes to their pitching, because Arrieta's going to be gone. Lester's getting older. Hendricks has regressed. And the pitchers they have on their farm are either not good enough or not close enough to where they can help this team in their current contention window. So somebody like Sonny Gray or Jose Quintana makes absolute perfect sense.
Yeah, and their top 2 pitching prospects are nowhere near ready for big leagues. Dylan Cease, I've seen him pitch front and center in South Bend, single A. Everything looks good. It's single A. He's got to go through high A, double A, triple A just to get to the big leagues.
And the point is, he's not close enough to help them next year. So I think that's an underrated part of what Rick Hahn has done for the White Sox is, when he locked up Chris Sale, he also locked up Adam Eaton and Jose Quintana on really good deals. Jose Quintana's deal, when it was initially reported, was 6 years, $26 million. On the open market, Jose Quintana makes $150 million. It's ridiculous how much value there is in his money. So with the Cubs, who are looking for cost-controlled guys, how can you not look at that? It just baffles me.
This is why we should be in a executive room
we really should.
Making big decisions. Unfortunately, we are not. We are here, Mom's Basement, YouTube, and iTunes. That's all we got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Really helps us grow. Appreciate you guys watching, listening, whatever it may be. We'll be back and better than ever very, very soon as the deadline moves closer. Thank you for watching, and peace.
This shit is so crazy. All my homies been turned up for like a week straight. This shit suck dick, she need a knee brace. This she wanna fuck me, it's in these days. And this shit keep my undies, that's a keepsake. But you could crash here, girl, don't be a dummy. I told her, show